Hello everybody, online, only online today. So welcome to the course of Nagarjuna's commentary on the awakening mind, or commentary on Bodhicitta. So it's mainly a commentary on the ultimate Bodhicitta, right, on emptiness, although a few verses towards the end always also talk about the conventional Bodhicitta. So this course mainly meant, of course, for the people who just graduated from EB, so then but for the other people also welcome, of course. But there are a few aspects of philosophy in it. So if certain aspects are a bit too much for you, then just leave it aside, so to say. But anyway, there's a few things will come up in the text. So it's a very inspiring text. Nagarjuna, as we know, wrote various texts. Wrote text on, as we know, the six kind of master pieces on the logic and reasoning on emptiness, right? And then one text regarding that those six texts were not made by himself, but based on the teaching of the Buddha. So that's like seven kind of extensive treatises on the view of emptiness. And then next to that, Nagarjuna also wrote various Lamrim style kind of short texts, like Letter for a Friend, which we did just recently. And then like this text, that kind of commentaries on aspects of the Lamrim. And that's a second group of texts, Nagarjuna compiled. And then there's a third one, the praises, that's praise of the Vajra mind, for example, and praise of dependent origination, and praise of the Dharmadhatu. So there are kind of three groups of texts by Nagarjuna, one of the greatest philosophers of ancient India. So today and the coming weeks, or what is it, about 3 months, then we will go over this text, the commentary on Bodhicitta, and we will have about 10 verses or so a week. So then you know more or less if you like to prepare. As far as I know, there's not really commentaries in English about this text. I mean, maybe I haven't seen, but could be. So I rely on the Tibetan commentary by Gomchen Ngawan Takpa, one of the great masters of Dakpo Dasan, who wrote many other commentaries on various stages of Sutra as well as Vajrayana. So that's a little bit about the history of the text itself. And another aspect of the text is that it's mainly focused upon an audience of the Vajrayana. Although the verses can be explained in a complete kind of sutra system. But this, in the beginning you will see it's mainly referring to aspects of the Bodhisattva who also practice Vajrayana. Okay, so then before we start a new course, then it's always important to, whatever you do, generally speaking, generate correct motivation. In particular, today, maybe try to set a good motivation that you want to understand mainly the ultimate Bodhicitta. Why? Because you already have contemplated the conventional one, right? The wish to achieve enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. And for that purpose, you need emptiness. You need to realize emptiness in order to eliminate all obscurations, in particular the cognitive obscurations. So, so that's why we're here, and thinking that that's needed for those countless beings who are within the cycle of existence, wandering around without a guide and in very much a lot of uncertainty. So for us, kind of responsibility to do something about it and to develop ourselves in the paths, in particular the two bodhicittas, right? So so generate the correct motivation for yourself. So then based on that motivation, imagine the Buddha in front, and surrounding the Buddha are the various lineages of method and wisdom. So Nagarjuna is then on the left, on the Buddha's left, I should say. And on the Buddha's right is Maitreya with a group of method. And then, behind that, the various lineages of, in the Guluk, we have then the Guyasamaja, Heruka, and the Yamataka, and the 16 drops in the Mahamudra lineages, and in front of the Buddha, the gurus, and then the various deities of the four classes of Tantras and Buddhas and the Prachekas, Shravakas, Dagas, Dakinis, right? So imagine, or just imagine the Buddha in front, it's also possible. And then surrounding yourself, imagine countless beings who are undergoing the suffering of birth, sickness, aging, death, or suffering of uncertainty and never being satisfied in samsara. And then you focus on those sentient beings and you think you want to do something about that. Yeah. For that purpose, you, besides the prayers, or you're chanting leader in the prayers, and imagine you lead by chanting the verses of the prayers. You lead all sentient beings to enlightenment. Yeah. So we do the praise of the Buddha, and then the Heart Sutra, the praise to the Dakinis, lion face Dakinis, and then the foundational qualities. Yeah.
I did have a little bit of speech making to do. Just a short one. I was going to put the text in the chat so people can read this text.
Completely following the full awakened being, perfect in knowledge and good conduct, so God I know the world, supreme guide of human beings to attain.
Teacher gods and human beings, to you, the completely and fully awakened one, the doubters and the destroyer, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shaktipan, as of straight make offerings and go for refuge. Founder of the doubters and the destroyer, the one God beyond the furthest one, completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect, in knowledge and in good conduct, so God I know the world, supreme guide of human beings to be tamed. Teacher gods and human beings, to you, the complete and fully awakened one, endowed transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, subdue from the second hand, prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge.
That's a nice praise to you, wise prostrate. It's from splendid praise, and every by common out. Blazes in the three worlds, winner of the best, to the prostrate. It's like spotless smooth, godlike gold to the prostrate. To you are prostrate. Say they have great compassion, defining every understanding, in the field of merit, qualities like a vast ocean. To you, the one contentedness and prostrate. Frees from attachment, the virtue, frees from the lower realms, one part sublime pure reality, and downward blessing, prostrate. So the path to liberation, the holy field qualified realizes, according to the lower precepts, to you, sublime community, attaining virtue and prostrate. Buddha, homage to the Dharma refuge, homage to the great Sangha, to go to reality of the world. Perfect happy homage. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions, perform only perfect virtuous actions. Subdue your mind thoroughly, this is teaching of the Buddha. Stars, visualization, flame of the lamp, illusion, drop or allure or bubble. Cloudsy conditioning and such. To beings attained, seen subdued full of faults and be delivered from themselves. Deterred by their ways, aging, sickness and death. Prostrate to Arya Triple Gem. Thus, on time in the Bhagavad. Monks and great coming to Buddhism. At that time, the Bhagavan was absorbed in concentration, contrast from the God before perception. Also at that time, the Bhagavan, Mahasattva Arya and Buddhism looked upon the very practice. discrimination, composition of factors and consciousness are empty. Like vital phenomena emptiness, without characteristics, unproduced, unceasing. Emptiness from emptiness no other from other than emptiness in the same way. Feeling discrimination, composition of factors and consciousness are Charipuja likewise all phenomena are emptiness without characteristics, unproduced, unceased things without not fulfilled. Charipuja, emptiness has no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no factors, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no form, no sound, no odor, no taste, no object of touch, and no phenomenon. There's finite and immense conscious intimate. Including no aging and death, no extinction, aging and death. There's no suffering, origination, cessation, and birth. Wisdom, no attainment, and also no non-attainment. Transaction, wisdom, and no fear. Supreme enlightenment and reliance on perfection. Therefore, not perfection and wisdom, not create no equal the mantra. That's why all suffering should be known as truth, things are not false. Declared, die, gata, pana, Bodhicitta. Perfection, wisdom like that. Then, Bodhisattva, well said, son of the lineage, like that. Just as you indicated, even that Joyce, the Bhagwan, the Vemachana, the Buddha, the Buddhist, the Geshe Namdak, the higher place, so combine the Bhagwan and prostrated again.
It's okay, I've muted it.
Hello, okay. Then you can say, then you can recite. Now recite. Akasamara says na samara yapi. Gata samgata bodhiso. Choose possessed. Right. responsibility of freedom. Even
decided by the body Bodhicitta, they don't practice the three types of morality, they will not achieve enlightenment, when clear recognition exists. He is blessed if he practices Bodhisattva vows with great energy. He is blessed if he practices the Bodhisattva vows with great energy. One player satisfies attractions to wrong objects, correctly analyze the meaning of reality. He is blessed to generate quickly within my mind stream the unified powers that come about especially insight. He is blessed to generate quickly within my mind stream the unified power that come about especially insight. Having become a pure vessel by training in the general path, he is blessed to enter the holy category of the fortunate ones, being by the vehicle. He is blessed to enter the holy category of the fortunate ones, being by the vehicle. By path, the basis of accomplishing the pure beings, is the pure vows of samadhi. The mind become firmly convinced of this. He is blessed if he trains his vows of pleasure night by night. He is blessed if he trains his vows of pleasure night by night. Then, having realized the importance of the two stages of the Vajrayana by practicing with great energy, having among the four sections, he is blessed to realize the teachings of the Holy Guru. He is blessed to realize the teachings of the Holy Guru. Like that, the Guru to show the noble path, the spiritual frontier practices from long lives. He is blessed to sanctify completely or after attaining achievement. He is blessed to sanctify completely or after attaining achievement. All my lives and separated from the Gurus of the ongoing lineage of Brahma, and increasing the qualities of the same prasad, and continuous in the same bhajana, and continuous in the same bhajana.
Sangye Jodon Sumi Sonam Janjo Bado Dani Gyasuji Dagi Chishu Gibe Sonam Dola Penche Sangye Doba Shu Sangye Jodon Sumi Janjo Bado Dani Gyasuji Dagi Chishu Gibe Sonam Dola Penche Sangye Doba Shu Sangye Jodon Sumi Janjo Bado Dani Gyasuji Dagi Chishu Gibe Sonam Dola Penche Sangye Doba Shu Chutun kangi tu sin izbe tawa tanchi pa machi tamchi de gotam de la chat salon. Yeah, so maybe start with that quote. I did that a few times before, but it doesn't matter. That also from Arya Nagarjuna, yeah, praise to the Buddha. Yeah, that Arya Nagarjuna praised the Buddha in a very similar way as many other teachers of the different traditions praise the Buddha because of his teachings of dependent origination or emptiness, right? So then it says, moved out of compassion. Yeah, so the Buddha who's moved out of compassion, spontaneous compassion, right? Always present. So don't have to contemplate like us. Yeah, but it's always just manifested in a manifest aspect, present. So that the Buddha's motivation, right? Moved out of compassion. Yeah, spontaneous. Then this is the first line of the praise. Yeah, you moved out of compassion. you eliminate the wrong views. Yeah, so not the wrong views of I'm right, you wrong. No, the wrong views in our minds. Yeah, that we have various types, of course, of ignorance. There's various types of ignorance, as most of you know, right? You have different types of ignorance. Ignorance of just merely not knowing. We have the ignorance of the root of samsara, yeah, but it's the most important one to eliminate. And we have the ignorance of among the 12 links of dependent origination, for example. And ignorance that are not views, ignorance that are views. So there's various types of ignorance, yeah. So when Nagarjuna said you moved out of compassion, you eliminate wrong views, then it's mainly referring, of course, to the root of samsara. Yeah, the root of samsara, according to the Prasangika school, is, of course, as most of you know, the apprehension of inherent existence, right? Or sometimes we say grasping or holding on to inherent existence. Yeah, so that type of ignorance, which is causing us to cycle around in samsara, that ignorance has to be removed, right? So that the Buddha has the capacity to remove that ignorance, not that the Buddha is capable of that the Buddha is capable of eliminating our suffering, or the Buddha is capable of eliminating our sins. Yeah. So the Buddha said, I cannot take away your suffering. I cannot wash away your sins. I cannot give my realizations to you, but I can show you the path to do it. Yeah, so that means that that's very true, right? We have individual streams of consciousness, and the Buddha cannot, just let our negative karma disappear, for example. Yeah, then we have to do ourselves. So the Buddha has to teach us that, and then we have to engage in that ourselves. So. But yeah, when Nagarjuna said you moved out of compassion, you eliminate the wrong views, means that by depending on the teachings of the Buddha, yeah, because the Buddha said, I cannot take away your suffering, wash away your sins, or give my realizations to you, but I can show you the path, how to do it. Yeah, so that's exactly in that verse. So first, the motivation, moved out of compassion, then you eliminate wrong views. And how does the Buddha eliminate the wrong views? By teaching the sublime Dharma. Yeah, so it says, you moved out of compassion, you eliminate wrong views, you teacher of the sublime Dharma. Yeah, so teacher of the sublime Dharma is referring not just to any teaching, but in particular the teaching of dependent origination. Yeah, the teaching on dependent origination helps us to understand emptiness, and by understanding emptiness, we eliminate those wrong views. Yeah, so in particular, the wrong view of ignorance that is the root of samsara. Yeah, in the Gelug tradition, we know that Lama Tsongkhapa wrote in praise of dependent origination. Yeah, it's a text Lama Tsongkhapa wrote. Frozen. I'm frozen, they people say. Yeah, sorry, maybe the internet connection's here not that good. But people can still hear me or not? Can you put back the screen? Yeah. Okay, thank you. People can hear me all the way through, right? I don't have to... Yeah, just the image was frozen. Yeah, I became permanent. Yeah, never die anymore. Yeah, always the same. Never, my hairline will not redraw, I won't get more grey hair. Yeah, it's good. So... what I say, yeah. So the Buddha moved out of compassion, eliminating the wrong views, by teaching the sublime Dharma. Yeah. Then Lama Tsongkhapa, after realizing emptiness, then Lama Tsongkhapa also, wrote this praise to the Buddha. Yeah. You can praise the Buddha in a way of his incredible qualities of his body, right? The major and minor marks, for example. You can praise the Buddha of his incredible aspects of the speech in general, yeah, the various qualifications of the speech. You can praise the Buddha because of his incredible mind, yeah, the omniscient mind of the Buddha, or a combination of those three. But Nagarjuna, same as Lama Tsongkhapa, choose to praise the teaching on dependent origination. because that's for us the way out of samsara. Yeah, of course, depending on the motivation of bodhicitta, yeah, to go to enlightenment or renunciation, to achieve liberation. Yeah, but the teaching of dependent origination helps us to understand reality, the conventional reality. By understanding conventional reality, we will understand ultimate reality. Yeah, so those two realities, or the two truths, conventional and ultimate, they are two sides of a coin. Yeah, Nagarjuna also said in the Ratnavali that the meaning of emptiness is dependent origination, and the meaning of dependent origination is emptiness, because things are in the nature of dependence, and that's the reason why things cannot exist in and by themselves. So this kind of philosophy, Nagarjuna, is, what is it? Let's say probably about 2,000 years old. Yeah, based on the words of the Buddha. Yeah, it's about 2,500 years old. Yeah. Then in science, particular, one of my favorite physicists, Carlo Rovelli, yeah, when he read these kind of aspects of Nagarjuna's philosophy, he said it left him amazed, because that's what they see in the data, that this nothing exists in and by itself. Things are just what he calls, relational quantum mechanics theory. Things are in the nature of relationships. Things are in the nature of correlations. Their matter is just a web of correlations, relative information. There's nothing solid to be found. Yeah? So that aspect of dependent origination or interdependence, yeah, that's a very very profound understanding of the conventional reality. And if you have that conventional, the understanding of that conventional reality, you can prove the ultimate reality, that nothing exists in and by themselves, or nothing exists in the inherent way, as we say. Yeah. So Nagarjuna praised the Buddha for that particular teaching. Yeah. So to repeat that verse, you moved out of compassion. You teacher of you moved out of compassion. You eliminate wrong views. You teacher of the sublime Dharma. To Gautam Buddha, I pay homage. Yeah, so that's kind of one verse His Holiness Dalai Lama always uses in the beginning of his teachings to when we teach the Dharma, then in the beginning we have one verse for the teacher to invite non-humans and let them abide and listen to the teachings, and they allow to stay higher up, because for gods the humans are quite smelly. We humans, we all together, so we don't really recognize or notice that. But for certain gods, it's a bit awkward to be too close. So then they allow to be up. Yeah. So that's one verse that we proclaim, and then after that, His Holiness always recites, and also I try to remember that always, but sometimes I don't. But yeah, most times. Then is this praise, this one verse praise. Right? So it's a very precious praise by Nagarjuna. It comes from the fundamental wisdom, right? The fundamental wisdom text. Yeah. So the fundamental wisdom text is one of those 7 texts on emptiness, yeah, and one of the 6 texts on logic and reasoning, yeah. And so today and the coming, 2.5 months or so, we will go over this commentary on the awakening mind. And awakening mind, as you know, bodhicitta, yeah. Body means awakening or lightened, and citta means mind, yeah. But there's 2 aspects, right? We have the conventional bodhicitta and ultimate bodhicitta. So the conventional bodhicitta, as we know, is a mind that is defined as you want, based on what we call the causal aspiration of great compassion. Yeah? So we have a mind that wishes others to be free of suffering. Yeah, and not just a general form of compassion. No, it's a kind of compassion that takes responsibility. Yeah, we know we have various types of compassion. We have the compassion of how wonderful would it be if all sentient beings are free from suffering. May they be free from suffering. Yeah, and then I will cause them to be free from suffering. Yeah, so that this sequence we train our mind in. Yeah, so first try to have kind of seeing how wonderful it is, and there's a need for that. So may they be free of suffering. Yeah, so those first 2 aspects, how wonderful it will be, may they be free. That's kind of a general form of compassion, right? That's not what we call great compassion. But if you go to the compassion of taking responsibility, or those who have studied the Lamrim in more depth, they know there's the kaza, the special intention in the seven instructions of cause and effect. Yeah, you have compassion, but and then you have the special intention. Yeah, so the compassion is related with those first two aspects we just talked about. How wonderful it will be, may essentially be free of some suffering. Yeah, and then after that you take the responsibility to do that, and that's what we call the special intention, right? And that's what we call great compassion. Yeah, so it's building up. Yeah, so first you see the need, you see how wonderful it is, then you see the need, and then you see that you have to take this step, or you have to take this commitment. Yeah, and then in the 7 instructions of cause and effect, there's this special intention, right? Yeah. So the same, you take responsibility, like Lama Zopa Rinpoche used to say, I will do it by myself alone. Yeah, so this kind of very determined kind of compassion, right? So so that's what we call great compassion. In Tibetan, sometimes we give the term kyab de giningche, which means kyab means to give refuge, yeah, and then de is a wish. So you could think is a kind of a wish to be of refuge, yeah, to give refuge to beings, and we know for taking refuge we have causes for refuge, right? We have the cause for the fear of suffering. Yeah, if you look at the refuge of the middling scope, yeah, the fear of suffering, and you have faith in that the 3 jewels in particular, the Dharma jewel, has the capacity to free you from that suffering, right? So here, the wish to be of refuge is that you cannot bear the suffering of others anymore, yeah, because it's this incredible, powerful, great compassion. And then you also know that it's possible to help those beings, because you know that beings are stuck in samsara, you know why they are stuck in samsara, and you also know how they get out of samsara, right? Yeah, so that's kind of this compassion of special intention in a 7 instruction, of course, in effect in the generation of bodhicitta, right? Yeah. So there's this great compassion that is one of the aspirations of bodhicitta. Yeah, we call that a causal aspiration. And then the second aspiration of bodhicitta is a resultant one. Yeah, that you see that you have to liberate beings, but you also see that at the moment we don't have the capacity, the complete full capacity to do that. Yeah, so we need a kind of qualifications or realizations to be able to do that. Yeah, and yeah, of course, the best qualification is enlightenment. Yeah, so then you can see that this bodhicitta, the mind of enlightenment, has those 2 aspirations, right? It has a wish for others to be free of suffering, and takes responsibility for that, of course, as well as a resident aspiration that aspires to go to Buddhahood in order to accomplish that goal. Yeah, so that's how we define normally bodhicitta, right? It's a mind that wishes others to be free of suffering and wants to achieve enlightenment, yeah, for that purpose. So that's what we call the conventional bodhicitta. Yeah. So that's one aspect. That's what we call the method aspect, right? The method aspect of conventional bodhicitta. But that by itself will not lead us to enlightenment. Yeah, we need an ultimate bodhicitta. Yeah, we need the wisdom aspect. Yeah, we need the 2 accumulations. In order to achieve enlightenment, you need the accumulation of merit, yeah, which is the method aspect, which is indicated with the conventional bodhicitta. And you need the wisdom aspect, yeah, what we call the ultimate bodhicitta, or emptiness. Yeah, emptiness has to be realized in order to eliminate all obscurations, or to eliminate all afflictions with their seeds and imprints, in order to achieve enlightenment. Yeah, so that's kind of the 2 bodhicittas: the conventional one, Yeah, this bodhicitta, which has its two aspirations, to the great compassion as a cause aspiration, and wanted to achieve enlightenment as a reasoned aspiration, right? Yeah. So then, if you meditate on the lamrim like that, that's why the technique is structured like that, right? You first get close to sentient beings, then you generate love and kindness, so you get closer, to sentient beings, and then by seeing them, first generate equanimity, then see them as your mother or your father or those who are close to you, or then you get close to them, then you have this kind of remember the kindness, and then repaying the kindness, then loving kindness, and then this compassion, general compassion. Then that compassion transforms into the special intention, of taking responsibility, or what we call great compassion. And then you see, do I have the capacity to do that, to liberate beings? And then you see, I need enlightenment. And then that mind transforms into what we call bodhicitta, right? Because you need those two aspirations. If you follow the other methods, if you follow the method of exchanging self for others, there's also first equanimity. You contemplate the faults of self-cherishing and the benefits of cherishing others, and then you exchange, and then you can do similar meditations on compassion and love and kindness, and then you combine it with Tonglen practice, right? And if you engage in that Tonglen practice, that enhances compassion and love and kindness, right? Because you take the suffering of others, either with visualization or without visualization, but there's various visualizations, as most of you know, right? So then you take the suffering of others, and then you give your own happiness to others, right? So by doing so, you train your mind in love and kindness and compassion, right? And on top of that, it also removes the obstacle to generate bodhicitta, which is a self-cherishing attitude. So if you really engage in genuine form of Tonglen, then the self-cherishing attitude goes, because it's based on exchanging self for others, right? So it's a very profound method to enhance love and kindness and compassion, but also to counteract the obstacle to bodhicitta. One of the main obstacles is the self-cherishing attitude. So that's why exchanging self for other methods is just very powerful. So then, if you do that Tonglen practice for some time, and if you have meditated on the lamrim, on the middling scope, because that's very important, to have some, good kind of renunciation for yourself, then the compassion becomes much stronger, right? The more you contemplate the middling scope, the more you understand suffering, and the more you understand suffering yourself, the bigger the wish for others to be free of suffering, right? So that's why it's very important to contemplate the middling scope over a very long period of time. That you really generate yourself a kind of complete understanding and experience of the suffering of samsara, and in particular the all-pervasive compounding form of suffering, right? So this suffering of samsara, and then you have a wish to get out of that suffering, then after that, to generate compassion is much easier, right? It's more in genuine form, because compassion is a wish for others to be free of suffering. So the more you understand suffering, the stronger that wish becomes. So that's kind of why it's very important to meditate on the middling scope on a regular basis in order to enhance compassion, right? So then, go back to the exchange self-other method. So you engage in this Tonglen practice, right? Giving and taking practice. You take the suffering of others, and you kasa. You give your own happiness to others, and then to an extent that you really don't care about yourself anymore. You only want to take the suffering of others, and then you imagine it ripens in your sickness or in your difficulties or in your self-cherishing attitude. If you can read and study that in the mind trainings, And then the compassion should become very strong. You know, I mentioned many times. If you Mahaboa is one of in the Gaza, in the Thai forest tradition. It's a very interesting lineage of Ajahn Chah, and before that, Mahaboa and Ajahn Mun, right? So there's this very moving video of Mahaboa weeping, the weeping Mahaboa, right? So then you can see, because his renunciation is so strong, this is a realization, right? And then on top of that, of course, he probably has realized emptiness, you know, and the clarity of the mind. Very interesting. If you hear him talking about it. And then he said himself that seeing sentient beings suffering automatically generates compassion, because you understand yourself the suffering of samsara very well, you know. So it's very moving. A very moving video, you know. So then you see from his own experience, having an experience of the suffering and seeing the scary aspect of samsaric existence and law of cause and effect and correlations between lifetimes, because of his clairvoyance. So for us, it's a bit more challenging, but for predictions like that, so then automatically you can see he's crying. You know, why? Because he sees the correlations of beings and why they suffer. You know, so that's why renunciation is so important to generate compassion, and then you go into the Tonglen practice, you know, and then your compassion becomes stronger and stronger, and then you can bear the suffering of others, and then you engage in this, taking the suffering of others and give your happiness to others, right? And then you imagine they get free of suffering and they achieve all the happiness. You visualize that, right, when you do Tonglen, you know. And then to the extent that they get completely the freedom of suffering and achieve the happiness, and they've been led on the path. You imagine they generate realizations of the path of the Lamrim, of renunciation, bodhicitta, emptiness. And then in your Tonglen practice, you imagine they achieve enlightenment or liberation according to their predispositions, right? They achieve those goals. So that's a very powerful practice. But then, in order to generate bodhicitta, you still need the resultant aspiration. So then, if you do that Tonglen practice for a certain amount of time, then towards the end, and that's very clear in one very precious text called the sealed instruction of bodhicitta. So Lama Dapo Rinpoche gave that 2 years ago, I think. Jamya. I mean online, Jamya. So there's a very precious instruction, because there it says, towards the end of the contemplation, then you think, oh, look, this is just a visualization, you know. I really have to do something about it. And then the Buddhist practitioner then engaged in taking the Bodhisattva vows, or if you have Vajrayana practice, then you engage in your sadhana. Then things will go very well. Then things. So this, because this text starts with Vajrayana for those who have a connection with Vajrayana. Then experience, realization probably comes very easily. Also, there was this great meditator in Dharamsala, Lobsang Tenzin. Right, Lobsang Tenzin. So a very interesting story. He was not educated in Tibet. He didn't know how to read or write. He was fighting the Chinese, doing occupation. And then he came to India, joined the army again. And then he received some teachings, and then he was really generated a form of renunciation, And then he took ordination, and then he lived in the mountains above Dharamsala in the 80s. So Lobsang Tenzin, he got high realizations of initially his renunciation and bodhicitta, no question. His Holiness didn't, because those days it was easier to meet His Holiness, no question. But emptiness was not really completely perfect. So His Holiness sent him back to the mountains for a year, and took what is Lama Tsongkhapa's great exposition to read and study, and then he went back to the mountains and then came back, and then after that it was fine, and then he got the realization of Dumo and many realization of Vajrayana. But he said he would not start his sadhana until tears came out of his eye, out of compassion. Otherwise, he said it didn't work. So that's kind of a real interesting practitioner, right? Yeah. So that means that if you do this Tonglen practice and you come towards the end, when you just before you want to finish your meditation, yeah, then you think, oh, it's just a visualization, right? I really have to do something, and then the Buddhist practitioner takes bodhisattva vows or engage in practices to establish cause for enlightenment. Yeah, so that's kind of. So then you think, okay, I have to become a Buddha to really help. Yeah, and then based on that aspect, you generate this reasoned aspiration, right? Yeah, so then you generate bodhicitta. Yeah, so that's up till here. I'll just explain that. I'll just explain that a bit. That's what we call the conventional bodhicitta, right? The mind of enlightenment that wishes to free others from their suffering, and for that purpose wants to achieve enlightenment, right? Yeah, so that's conventional bodhicitta. So now, from now on, we're gonna more talk about the ultimate bodhicitta, because that's most part of the text is about ultimate bodhicitta. Yeah. Okay, so let's start then with the text. Yeah. So the title, commentary on the awakening mind, or commentary on the ultimate bodhicitta, right? Mainly. Yeah. And then in the beginning of the text, it says, homage to the glorious Vajrasattva. Yeah. So the heroic holder of the Vajra, right? That's the praise of the translator of the text. Yeah, that in Tibet, when all the Sanskrit texts were translated into Tibetan, then they made a rule. The government made a rule that you have the various classifications of the text. You have the Tripitaka, right, or the three baskets. So according to the Tripitaka and the three individual baskets, then you have different types of homage. Yeah. So, for example, for the Vinaya Pitaka, which indicates the higher training of morality. Yeah. Then the translators they pay homage to the omniscient one. Yeah, because the omniscient one knows law of cause and effect, or karma, inside out. And because of that's exactly why the Buddha knew how to establish the Vinaya, or how to establish the conduct or the rules of discipline and the rules of morality. Yeah? If you completely understand karma, then you know exactly, if you do this, that will happen. If you do this, that will happen. And then, based on that, omniscient mind, then you can establish a morality for people. Don't engage in this, because that will bring harm. So don't kill, don't steal, don't engage in sexual misconduct, don't lie. Those, for example, the 10 non-virtues, or those who live in the vows of a layperson, or those who live in the vows for the ordained, right? That's all referring to the omniscient mind of the Buddha, and then the Buddha proclaimed the various vows, right? So that's what we call the Vinaya Pitaka. Yeah? It's referring to the higher training of morality. Yeah. Then we have the Sutra Pitaka, which is referring to the higher training of concentration. Yeah, it's needed in order to generate bodhicitta. The conventional bodhicitta needs calm abiding, or preliminary to that. Yeah. And in order, of course, to understand and realize emptiness, you need a very powerful mind with a lot of concentration, right? So that's kind of what we call selflessness, right? Really, realizing no self, you need concentration, right? Yeah. So in that category of texts, in the Sutra Pitaka, there it says, because then the Sutra Pitaka is then referring to the Sanskrit text, right? And then we say, then the translators, they said, I pay homage to the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Yeah? So that's kind of what's been paying homage in the Kasa, in the Sutra Pitaka. Yeah? So in the Vinaya Pitaka, the translators put in the first line, I pay homage to omniscient one. In the Sutra Pitaka, the translators said, I pay homage to Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Yeah? So in the Pali tradition, it's slightly different, right? So here we talk about the Sanskrit tradition. And then in the third basket, the Abhidhamma Pitaka, which is related with the higher training of wisdom, then it's kind of, I pay homage to Manjushri, for example, yeah? the Buddha of wisdom. Yeah. So, but here it says, homage to the glorious Vajrasattva. Yeah? So here, Vajrasattva belongs to the Vajrayana. Yeah? So the Vajrayana, as we know, is not spread everywhere. In the early days, in India, ancient India, as was always kept secret, yeah? Because it's very easy to generate misunderstandings of the Vajrasattva. So that's why it was only taught to a smaller group of people, you know. Yeah. So, and that's probably why certain kind of lineages or traditions, they say the Vajrayana is maybe not a teaching of the Buddha, because it was not that widespread, right? So that kind of understandable why they have that view, you know. It's always been kept secret. Yeah. So now it's been spread a bit more. Yeah, the Tibetans were quite open with it, and in the West it's also all over the place almost. So yeah, but yeah, it's a kind of a secret practice, right? So here is kind of homage to the glorious Vajrasattva. So this text also, as you can read in one of the preliminaries to the text, and in the first verse also there are references to the Vajrayana. Yeah, but the presentations throughout the text mainly follow emptiness according to the sutra system. So there's actually no difference. From the point of view of the object, emptiness, there's no difference between the sutra and the Vajrayana parts, right? But from the point of view the mind realizing emptiness, there's different. Yeah? So either the mind is coarser or subtler, or the mind belongs to the form realm or the formless realms, or in the Vajrayana the minds, even in the four classes of Tantra, there's different types of minds that have been generated, right? Or the most subtle minds in the Dzogchen and Mahamudra traditions that realizes emptiness. Yeah? So there's various types of mind that are used to realize emptiness. Yeah? So the object emptiness always remains the same. Yeah, it's just the mind realizing it is different. Yeah, either more coarse or more subtle. Yeah, so in the Vajrayana, it's a very subtle mind. It's generated by certain sophisticated meditation techniques. Yeah. Anyway, that's not a part of this course, but then because it says here Vajrasattva. Yeah. So this is the kind of the resultant vehicle, as we call it, right? Yeah. That you take the result into the path. Okay, so that's kind of the homage. Then it's the introduction by Nagarjuna. Then it says, you see that first kind of, what is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines. Yeah, the first paragraph. So that first paragraph is according to the commentary I use, of the Galupa commentary though, by Dagbo Gongchen Ngawan Thakpa, you know. So there he says in his commentary, and there's also a commentary in the Tengyur. Yeah, I haven't been able to look at that, but yeah. So there it says, but yeah, the commentary I look at is mainly drawn from that ancient Indian commentary, as you can find back in the footnotes by Tipan Jimpa. Yeah, that's kind of Janakirtis, yeah, one of the Indian scholars, yeah, that from ancient India commentary. But yeah, the commentary of Ngawan Thakpa follows that very closely. So there it says the first few lines I just mentioned. That's the kind of refutation of other schools. Yeah, this text by Nagarjuna follows the Prasangika school of Buddhist philosophy. Yeah, so in English we often translate it as a consequent school of Buddhist philosophy. Yeah, we know we have 4 schools, generally speaking, in Buddhist philosophy. Yeah, we have the the Sautantrika, the Vaibhasika, the Sautantrika, the Chittamatra, and the Madhyamaka schools, right? And then among the Madhyamaka, the middle way schools, Madhyamaka schools, we have different sub-schools. Yeah? So here, Nagarjuna's text here, and also his other texts like Fundamental Wisdom, for example, they all follow the Nagarjuna's the tenets of the Prasangika, or the consequent school, what we consider as the highest, or the most profound, I should say, the most profound interpretation of reality. Yeah, I just mentioned that in the current times that many physicists, in particular in the field of quantum mechanics and quantum gravity, they seem to really like this philosophy, because it seems to indicate similarities, a lot of similarities between this philosophy and what we see happening in quantum mechanics, especially the relational interpretations of quantum mechanics. Yeah. So Nagarjuna is upholder of that school of the consequent school, and then the first few lines is then Nagarjuna is refuting other schools of Buddhist philosophy, to state that they are not, not really getting the point completely. Yeah. So there it says the void of all real entities. Yeah. So nothing exists real, nothing exists from its own side. Yeah. So we often think things exist from their own side. You think your body exists from its own side. You think your mind exists from its own side. You think the things you see around you exist solid out there without dependence. Yeah, that's how things appear to us. Yeah, in particular, when afflictions or disturbing emotions arise, like anger or obsessive desire or jealousy or pride or fear for death, for example, same thing. There's a very strong sense of a self that arises. Yeah, very solid, like a real entity. Yeah, So that self does not exist. There's a conventional person thinking, sitting, and writing things down and meditating, right? But there is no real entity existing in and by itself. Yeah, so that's does not exist. Yeah, so that's what it says here: devoid of all of real entities. Yeah, devoid of, or being empty of, or not having these real entities. Everything is in nature of dependence. Yeah, we see the same in quantum mechanics, that the subatomic particles, they do not exist in and by themselves. Yeah, we always make nice drawings of different circles and then label them the different kind of names, electron, neutrons, whatsoever. But actually, it is just a property of matter. It's not really like a ball or a little thing, a drop or a point or whatsoever. It's just a property, right? And property of matter is just, correlations between, other kind of particles, right? That's what very clear in Carlo-Rovelli's relation to quantum mechanics. Yeah? So things are devoid of empty of real entities. Things do not exist in and by themselves. Yeah? So that's kind of throughout the text. Yeah, that comes up. Then it says utterly discarding all objects and subjects. Yeah, meaning all phenomena we can divide into objects and subjects. Yeah, there's either a mind that perceives something or apprehends something, and there's an object that doesn't have to be mind. Yeah, so like the things we see, the things we hear, the things we smell, taste and touch. Yeah, all those objects of the senses or object of mental consciousness, if you like. Yeah, they're the same nature. Yeah, nothing exists in and by itself. And also consciousness itself does not exist in and by itself. If you look into your mind and you look, where is that consciousness? Then there's various moments of consciousness. There's past, present, future. So if you look in those moments, if you subdivide the present into the past, present and future, and that present you subdivide, and that present you subdivide, you can keep subdividing in very, very short periods of time. Yeah, of course, we cannot really perceive smaller moments of consciousness, but there you cannot really find an independent moment of consciousness, right? Because whatever we call the present is depending on the past, whatever we call the past is dependent on the present and the future. So there is no consciousness existing independent without dependence, right? Yeah, so also consciousness cannot exist in and by itself. Yeah, so consciousness is also empty of inherent existence, yeah, or empty of real entities. Yeah, so all objects are empty of real entities. All states of mind are empty of real entities. Yeah, so it's what it says here: devoid of all real entities, utterly discarding all objects and subjects. Yeah, we often see in the Perfection of Wisdom sutras: no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind. Yeah. Young Rinpoche gave a very interesting last teaching. Young Rinpoche was in Jamyang. Young Rinpoche gave a very interesting story about people walking for a few months from Kham, eastern Tibet, to Lhasa in the early days. It sometimes takes a month or 2 or 3. And one person was reciting the Heart Sutra from memory constantly. Yeah. And the other person didn't, and the other person got a bit annoyed with the person reciting all the time. And then he said, "You constantly say no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no tongue, no body. Yeah, so just keep the first five. No eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue." So then he said, "Why don't you just say no head?" Because if there's no head, you don't have to repeat all the other aspects of no eyes, no ear, no nose. Anyway, it's for Tibetan. In Tibetan, it's much more funny than in English, actually. That happens very often. When I was translating from Zoba Rinpoche in Serra, the Harigriva transmissions, but Rinpoche said first, everybody came from the Harigriva transmissions. We had more than 1,000 people in the hall, and then Rinpoche decided to teach something else. Yes. And then Rinpoche made a few jokes in Tibetan. I really cracked down laughing. I couldn't help, and I had to translate. So then people around me they said, "Namdak, what's happening? We're missing out." But in Tibetan, it's sometimes much more funny than in English. Yeah. Anyway, so everything is empty of inherent existence. Yeah. So objects and subjects. Yeah. So it means minds and the objects of the minds. Right. That's the same nature. Yeah. It's all in the same nature. So then it says aggregates, elements, and sense fields. Yeah, so here it's mainly referring, this line, yeah, aggregates, elements, and sense fields, is mainly referring to the Great Exposition School of the Vaibhasika school. Because that's why they call it Great Exposition. They have these various divisions. So, the various divisions. And they say things exist inherent. Yeah, they think things exist inherent. It's very, how to say, it's very similar. If you look at Vaibhasika and the South Tantrika, it's very similar to Newton's interpretation of reality. Very I would say, kind of almost an absolutism of objects. Yeah, so that's true for the Great Exposition School. Yeah, but Nagarjuna will refute that, right? That those objects do not exist in and by itself. Yeah. So in the Great Exposition School and the Sutra School, so this line, such as aggregates, elements, and sense fields, is mainly referring to the refutation of the Great Exposition and Sutra schools, or the Vaibhasika and the Sautantrika schools. Yeah, that all those objects, as they say, exist the way they appear. Yeah, that's what they say. Whatever appears to you, that's especially with direct perception. Yeah, those who have done EB, they know the difference between direct perception and conceptual consciousnesses, right? So whatever is a direct perception, your eyes seeing an object, or you're hearing the sound, then what you see with your eyes or what you hear with your ears, that's the reality. That's how it is. That's a view of the Great Exposition School and the Sutra School. But that's not the reality. Objects do not exist the way they appear. Yeah, according to the other schools, according to the Mind-Only school, according to the Middle Way schools, things do not exist the way they appear. But according to the first two schools, the Great Exposition and Sutra School, then things, they say things exist the way they appear, if it's kind of a direct perception. Yeah, because a direct perception is what they call, is kind of non-mistaken. Yeah, in those two schools, right, in the Sutra School and the Vaibhasika School. Yeah. So there's a difference, because in the other schools we say things do not exist the way they appear. Yeah, things are different. Then it says, then the next line, due to sameness of selflessness of all phenomena. So that's referring to the mind-only school, or the Chittamatra. Yeah, so that in the mind-only school they say, okay, you Vaibhasika and Sautrantika, you say objects exist the way they appear, but that's not a reality. Things are depending on the mind. There are subjective aspects of consciousness. So what appears to your mind and the mind itself, yeah, they are not of a different entity. They are of the same nature. That's what they say in the mind-only school. But that doesn't mean they are the same. Yeah, in the mind-only school, they don't say everything is mind. It's often a misunderstanding that you can see in certain kind of books, but that's not reality, because being of the same nature doesn't mean it has to be the same thing. Yeah, I often indicate that you look at your screen at a moment, yeah, and you see colors and you see a shape, yeah, and you also know that your computer is in the nature of impermanence. It will break down one day. Yeah, that's going to happen. I hope not today, but one day it will break down. So that impermanence of your computer is in the same nature as the color and the shape. From the point of view, it's a quality that belongs, or property that belongs to the computer, right? And it abides at the same time, together with the color and the shape. So that's why we say that's the same nature. But it's not the same. Color is different from shape, and the impermanent nature of your computer is different again, right? Yeah, so being of the same nature does not mean to be the same. Anyway, it's just for those who have studied that already a little bit. So in the mind-only school they say things appear, the way they appear, as distant from consciousness and almost cut off from consciousness. Yeah, there's a Tibetan term Lama Tsongkhapa often refers to in his speech of eloquence, that Gyangche de Nangwa means things appear distant and cut off from consciousness. Things appear as a separate entity. When you look around, things don't really appear to you as it's related with consciousness, right? But if you look at something and a person sits next to you and look at the same object, if it's a park or a mountain or building, whatever, you have two different experiences, right? Your experience and the person next to you has an experience. Those two are different. While the object out there is the same. You're looking at the same object, right? So that means consciousness is very subjective. It's extremely subjective. Yeah, that what appears to us is not really the reality. Yeah, so yeah, that's pretty clear, right? If you have a person who is depressed and you are okay, or you're happy, cheerful, and you look at a park, and then the way you look at a park, the same park is different. Your experience is different. Or you sit next to a person who's on drugs, maybe tripping, maybe a good trip or maybe a bad trip. Then the way that person sees reality, the way you see reality, reality, the way you look at things and that person looks at things, completely different experience, right? So that proves that consciousness is extremely subjective. Yeah. So we always think what appears to our consciousness or what we think is a reality, but actually it's not. Yeah, it's just an approximation. It's just an approximation of reality, right? That's what it is. And so things we see as very solid out there, without dependence on consciousness, but that's not really true, right? Yeah. So that's in the mind-only school, kind of the interpretation that things do not exist the way they appear from the point of view. Things appear as a completely different entity from consciousness, right? As being cut off from consciousness at a distance. Yeah, so that's not really a reality according to the mind-only school, right? Yeah. But it doesn't, according to the Prasangika, not everything is in the nature of the mind, right? So the Prasangika gives slightly different interpretation of that. So but you can see the mind-only school is already going much more subtler than the Vaibhasika and the Prasangika. Sorry, Vaibhasika and the Sautrantika, right? Because the Vaibhasika and Sautrantika, they say objects exist the way they appear, right? Well, the mind-only school, they say that's not true. Things are dependent on consciousness. Things are very much dependent. Things are subjective, right? Whatever appeals to your mind depends on how you've seen those things before, how you've thought about those things before, your conceptualizations about those things. That our current perceptions influence future perceptions, right? That's very clear. Our habituation patterns influence future perception. Yeah. So that's those imprints. They or seeds in our mind. They produce. Yeah. So that's one way. It's true, but the Prasangika will not go to the extreme that everything is in the nature of consciousness. Things are dependent on the mind, yes, but they don't go that far. Yeah, but for those who've did already a little bit more in EB, they know what we're talking about. So then the next line, when it says one's mind is primary, unborn. Yeah, so that's kind of an referring to the autonomy school. Yeah, so that's kind of an aspect that the mind, the primordial mind, yeah, here because it's related with Vajrayana, is unborn from the point of view doesn't exist truly. Yeah, that's what they say in the autonomy school. Does not exist truly. Yeah. And then the last line is more referring to the Prasangika interpretation. Yeah, everything is in nature of emptiness, and then the emptiness of inherent existence. Yeah. Yeah. I was planning to do a few more verses today, but I think we go to 9. So, is it? No?
We're 1 hour ahead.
Allez. So it's. Sorry, I'm in France, so I just look at the time. So what's now? We started at 8:30.
Yeah,
So.
we would go to 9 and then half an hour for questions.
10.
Allez.
Hello, Geshe.
Yes.
Hello, we have 15 minutes left.
Okay.
Including questions.
Including, yeah, that's what I thought. So let's,
Okay.
yeah, because I thought the first, there's quite a lot of material in the first kind of session. So maybe, we leave it with that for today, and then if there's any questions, then this might be helpful to clarify.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So online only.
Yeah, that's it. Okay, so if you have a question, please raise your little Zoom hand.
Huh?
And I will allow you to unmute yourself. What about Spanish, Geshe? Do you think should we alternate week by week or something like that, and that'll be difficult
Yeah,
to get through?
Ken, let's see how many questions there are. Otherwise, I can take them separate one day, what I did before.
Okay, all right. Okay, good. Are there any questions? Are there any questions in here, in the library?
Are there any questions here? Yeah.
Are there any questions there?
Allez, easy.
Why are everybody so shy tonight? What's going on? There we go. Thank you, Victoria. Thank you so much. Okay, go ahead. I think you can unmute yourself. Yeah.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you. This is very exciting. Looking forward to this course.
Yeah.
As you may or may not recall, I'm doing a lot of interfaith research. And when you were talking in the beginning about, you said something that kind of startled me because I've never heard anyone say this in the context of Buddhism about the Buddha cannot wash away sins, and I thought, wow, that sounds like such a Christian expression.
Yeah.
And the idea, so what I've always been like sort of circling around is the contrast between like Western, especially Theravada, Vipassana Buddhism in the United States, where I am, which is very, very secularized, and then Vajrayana, and I was at the the event on the weekend and very moved by that. I mean, your sorry, I'm nervous.
Yeah.
So the big contrast between the devotional approach to the Buddha and the more secular approach to the Buddha, and our own personal responsibility for achieving enlightenment, and also even in the Bodhisattva vow, this taking the responsibility upon ourselves. So I just wonder if you could comment a little bit more about that, because as I said, this when you were talking about the Buddha in the beginning, I saw this kind of like the contrast between what I've experienced as this, the secular tendency versus the devotional.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. So the secular aspect, of course, as you said before, there's many people. Yeah. So people have interest in Buddhist mind science and its philosophy, for example, but not really in the Buddhist practice. Yeah. So that's fine. People can study the Buddhist doctrine in a secular way and study the philosophy, study the mind science, and if it's beneficial for their own minds, they can put it into practice, in a secular way. Yeah. But then there are also a group of people who are really interested to progress in the path, in the part of what we call the Lamrim, or the spiritual path to liberation and enlightenment. Then for those people, then the devotional aspect can play a role and can be of great benefit. Yeah. We see that same in all other forms of religion, or even in Christianity, in that regard, right? You have people just studying Christianity in general. You have people with a lot of faith and very devotional. And you see that also, I think, in each and every tradition. That in Hindu traditions, you see the same thing. People just study the Vedas, but you have also the devotional aspects of various practices. Yeah. And these devotional aspects can bring great benefit. And you see that in the Christian tradition as well. If you have strong faiths in Lourdes, for example, people get cured because they go there and they have a kind of faith in various aspects, or the case, Francisco von Assisi, for example, then they receive a kind of blessing, so to say, and then some people, even sickness get cured, or their mind become more compassionate, right? So that we have, I think, in every form of faith or religion, those two aspects, the more secular aspects of the mere understanding of the philosophy or the reasons or the different texts, and the devotional aspect to move your mind into that experience of what we say, getting the realizations eventually. Yeah. But it's up to the individual, right? Of which where you start, where you want to go, and what you would like to achieve, and yeah.
All right, Terrell. No, sorry. Before we come to you, Terrell, before I forget, there was a question in the chat. Why is Vajrasattva the Vajra holder, Geshe?
One aspect, because it holds the Vajra, as an implement, Vajra and bell. And Vajra holder also refers to holding the non-duality of bliss and emptiness. But yeah, that explanation maybe we do in another course. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And then next, somebody just disappeared. There was Terrell, and then there was somebody else who put their hand down. You can put your hand back up. We probably see next time. Terrell, go ahead.
All right, hello everybody. Hello, Gina. Thank you so much for these teachings. Hello. So, as you started with the homage, and you reminded us of how with the Sanskrit tradition, right, that how the Sutra Pitaka, the Abhidhamma Pitaka, and the Vinaya Pitaka have their various homages.
Yeah.
But as you said, this one is to the glorious Vajrasattva, which is, if I understood correctly, does not fit directly, at least in the most obvious way. Usually it's the Buddha or Bodhisattvas, or Tripitaka, or to the omniscient one.
Yeah.
And somehow, I see in my notes, I must have missed the point as to why. Is it simply because Nagarjuna is sort of, did you say in the commentaries that it does say that this is a sort of tantric oriented text, even though of course the emptiness object is the same, or was there another reason?
Yes, it's a tantric text. Also, if you read 2 verses below, it says that practice by the means of the secret mantra, right? Yeah. And then Vajrasattva, of course, with the Tripitaka is basically the Vajrayana doesn't fall into the category of the Tripitaka of the Sutra. Yeah, that's clear. But if you read the various texts on the Vajrayana, then within the Vajrayana you have a Tripitaka. Yeah, within the Vajrayana you have certain commentaries and root texts that belong to the morality. Yeah, like the Vajrayana, the vows, for example, the tantric vows. And certain aspects that belong to concentrations, for example, generation stage and completion stage practices regarding concentration. And then, with regards to the wisdom or higher training of wisdom, yeah, or in this way, Abhidhamma Pitaka, if you wish, yeah, then to realize emptiness with that subtle mind, yeah. So in that way, we have divisions of the Vajrayana within the Tripitaka as well, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And this is a common homage within that division
Exactly,
of
yeah.
three as well.
Yeah.
Okay. That's a missing fact I didn't know.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Ken.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Carol. Next we have Jeff. I think this is the last one.
Oh yes. So thank you. Excuse me. Thank you for the teachings. I just wanted to make a comment about connected to the first question.
Yeah.
And that to me, the idea that the Buddha says that the path can be shown, but we have to sort of walk the path. We have to do the work ourselves. Makes perfect sense to me. I mean, I can't imagine it could be otherwise, really. But then, in terms of Christianity, well, what would it be? I was saying in Christianity. I'm sorry, I've lost my train of thought from Christianity here. But there are two things I would say. I don't know if these things are very difficult for me anyway. But I think in many traditions, perhaps, but certainly in Christian tradition, there's the concept of grace, the grace of God. Maybe I don't know if people think we're saved by grace. Maybe they do. I don't know. But grace would be something that it doesn't come from us. It comes from God. But I don't think it's telling us that grace will solve all of our problems. And I think in Christianity there are these huge discussions about the problem of evil. If there's an all-loving God, why is there evil in the world? But then some people say, well, free will. So we kind of have free will. And free will, even if it ultimately doesn't really exist, it sort of connects to what the Buddha is saying about we've got to make the effort ourselves to become enlightened, so not to choose that path, So there's a few comments. Thank you.
All right. So I have to comment on that, or
if you like, yes,
okay.
yes.
Yeah. I mean, the grace also is kind of one aspect is a kind of a blessing, right? Maybe you could say also. That what we have in Buddhism also in various other forms of religion is there, right? So that means that because the object has particular qualities, yeah, if it's God or Jesus or Hindu gods or whatever religion you follow, so that's kind of an aspect of qualities with a particular being, yeah, and then just be in the presence of that being, already you can get some benefit, and the more faith you have based on those qualities, then the blessings come stronger, right? Yeah, you see that everywhere. Yeah, miracles happen and things like that, right? So that's, I think that's in every religion, faith is there, and that helps us to transform. So in Tibetan we have a term, Jingilap. Jingilap means blessing. Yeah, so there's two things, two syllables. Jin lap. Jingilap is a possessive particle in between. Yeah. So that means that Jin is kind of something magnificent, something very special. Yeah. Lap is transformation. So it's actually transforming your mind in something magnificent. Yeah. So meaning you gain the quality, and that's even more emphasized in the Vajrayana, Mahamudra, in particular in Dzogchen traditions and Mahamudra tradition. Then, because of that blessing, but also we see it in the Lamrim, right? The receiving the blessings with the Buddha, the more faith you have, the stronger the blessings, and because of that, your mind can move into a kind of understanding all of a sudden and you see that also in other forms of religion or faith, that people get an insight, or they get an instant kind of experience. Yeah, so that's definitely true.
Yeah. Great. Thanks very much.
Yeah, thank you so much. Good to see you again, by the way. Yeah.
Thank you, Jeff. We have a few more questions, Geshe, but Carol's got one that says, can you tell us a little bit more about Nagarjuna maybe next week? So maybe should we save these questions for next week?
Nagarjuna story, yes, that will take a few minutes, right? Yeah. But if there's yes or no or related questions, then we can take one or two.
Okay, let's go with Simon. You're able to unmute yourself, Simon?
Hi. When I try to understand emptiness, I think it's amazing this correlation. You talk about the quantum mechanics correlates quite well with emptiness, but when I try to understand deeper, I have heard you tell sometimes that we can subdivide space or time to the infinite. So this, when I try to understand emptiness this way, using some kind of scientific knowledge to understand it, I crash with some kind of obstacles, because in quantum physics they talk about the Planck length, the Planck time. I try to say there is a tiny but not infinite. We cannot divide to the infinite the space. We cannot divide to the infinite the time. So I think this is a difficult.
I mean,
thing,
it's not. It's all kind of what we call approximations of reality, right? It's just tools to understand reality, So same with constants, constants of gravity or constants of the speed of light, or they're not that constant as they actually are, as they appear to be. Yeah. So same with gravity. There seems to be science that proves that gravity changes, although it's very, very minimum. But they're not. I mean, if you really take those aspects into account, then you see there's no really one aspect that is completely solid or remains always the same. Yeah. So the same with these kind of aspects you just mentioned, right? It's just referring to various aspects of approximations of reality. We use various tools to understand reality, right? But yeah, it remains all in the nature of dependence. Yeah, as we know, with constants like gravity and things like that as well. It's all depending on various factors. So you cannot. Constants are not that constant as people think, or as most people think, if you really look at the science behind it. Yeah, so everything is nature of dependence, basically. Yeah, even on the, what Carlo Rovelli says, matter is nothing else than just a web of correlations, right? It's just kind of what we call, subatomic particles are just only exist by the nature of its dependence on other things than themselves. Yeah, nothing exists in and by themselves. No.
Yeah, but he speaks about quantums of space. That's the base of when Carlo Rovelli says something like that. We have quantums of space. This is the base of the gravity.
Yeah.
And but okay, maybe this is not the time to talk
Yeah,
about
maybe
this.
you have to ask
Sorry.
a good scientist.
Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah.
I will find a better time to
Yeah, sure.
talk about.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, no problem. All right.
And then just one more in the chat came in, Geshe. What is the main purpose or message of this text, besides the concept of emptiness of inherent existence and the aspiration for bodhicitta?
Not much other. I mean, the main purpose of the text is to explain emptiness, and as you see in the beginning, especially for those who strive to progress on the spiritual path, yeah, those bodhisattvas who like to progress. So for their purpose, Nagarjuna wrote this text on emptiness. Yeah, if you know you need to realize emptiness in order to progress on the spiritual path, in order to eliminate obscurations, in particular obscurations to liberation and enlightenment, right? So for that purpose, that's the main purpose of composing this text, right? And then, of course, from the point of view of philosophy on a secular level, then there's various interesting aspects to it. Yeah.
Okay, so sir.
Okay, thank you so much, people online, and then see you next week, I suppose, or yeah, sooner, whatever. Yeah. Okay, thank you so much, and then let's dedicate with the normal dedications.
Yes. Controller, could you maybe mute the microphone over there so we don't have the...
You do the... You have... Okay. Yeah. Jeba Jason Lozan Rapai Tembe Ningo Rindu Sabje Sho Kake Rawe Korea Singam Yumen Chere Sigwan Tenzin Chabe Shite Badu Tangyu Tenji Dahan Jaham Yenge Ten Chu Yon Bell Kachura Sunde Nyu Mi Sin Ba Ju Je Gao Pen Gao De Nyu Je Shu Sem Jo Rinpo Che Magye Pana Gyu Chi Jeba Nyamba Me Gone Gonde Belwa Shu Tony Da Magye Pana Gyu Chi Gone Gonde Belwa Shu.
As long as spirits remain, as long as migrators remain.
To then may I too remain to dispel the suffering migrators. King of Dharma, Sankapas, Ray of Dharma, practice flourish, and may their own pacified, sincere sense be complete.
Proud of having made finger pointing your breast to the Chandrapa, the royal body and manifestation of the generous age, honoured and imparting equanimity of Dharma pacified, the ancient collections of priests, especially the Bodhicitta to fulfill. I invoke the power of loving kindness and compassion to change, which is the force of nature and let us pray.
May all
Satisfied, so that all beings have long, healthy and happy lives. In the glorious society of the stable,
all beings spend space.
and happiness.
May I, in order without exception, accumulate merit to purify negativities. May all Buddhahood. The Yanda Lama Dame Chugi Bella Sada Langi Yunda Rabzoni Doje Chaki Gopan Sho. Okay, thank you so much, everybody online, and then.
So much, oh, Geshe, we can't hear you.
Somebody knocked me out. Oh yeah, because of that, yeah. So yeah, thank you very much, everybody online, and then see you soon. Yeah, thank you. Bye bye.